All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. So I've got Daniel Yores with me. Daniel, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Shawn. Thanks for having me, man, and great pronunciation on the last name.
Oh, thank you very much. So, yeah, as we were chatting before, why don't you just give us a little bit of a brief introduction to who you are, what you do, things like that, that we can get a good uh understanding of who we're talking with and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Shawn said, my name's Daniel. I live just outside of Toronto, Canada, so that might be a new thing or seem exotic to some people. I'm a personal trainer online and in person, kind of more into the online space now, but I always love in person. I think there's a special place in my heart for that, and as logistically as much as it will ever work out, I'll always keep that. The very short version of why I got into all of this and why I got into fitness and became a trainer is that I played sports a lot growing up. Soccer was my main sport. I had a whole series of injuries, and I was always getting injured, mainly my knees, and that all culminated in a big surgery that put me out for a while. But through all of that, I was in and out of physical therapy, chiropractic, athletic therapists, different types of medical interventions and whatever. And I would just got interested in what is the human body doing? Why does it keep breaking? And how can I make it stop doing this? And that kind of led me into, okay, I want to go into sports science or kinesiology. I didn't really know, what that looked like or what that meant, what the end stage of that was. I actually went to chiropractic school. I did that for a year. Story for another day that we may or may not get into, probably not, but ended up not continuing with that and then becoming a trainer, trying to be on the front lines of things. And how can we make people more robust, stronger, more resilient, healthier up front so that they don't get injured? How can I see people when they're doing well, so to speak, and improve people's lives that way? And here we are.
Yeah, that's sweet. I mean, I think it's a little um unorthodox in terms of who I normally speak to in terms of how people get into fitness. I feel they have their own transformation when they're working with someone specifically for fat loss. They have their own like fat loss type of transformation, and that's what kind of
Mhm.
bridges them into that. So for you to hear, okay, it was injury, more the athletic, almost athletic training type of like not background, but like what was going on in your life and things like that is an interesting segue into where you're at now. So how come you didn't go into like a PT type of role or um like something more rehabilitative?
So originally, I did want to go that route.
Yep.
And when I did go to chiropractic college, there was, I think, my not continuing with it was equal parts my immaturity and ignorance about the system and the way that things were working and the system itself. And so I went into school, with big eyes and a big heart and trying to think like, hey, I want to come here to learn things to help people. And I found that at the beginning, anyways, there was such a huge focus on, well, let's get good grades and let's memorize all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm done with the getting good. We'll get good grades. I'm no issue with that. But like, I need to actually learn something. I don't need to just memorize a series of lists and names and procedures just to pass a test. Like that doesn't help me when a real patient is in front of me. And so some other kind of like political things within the profession, all this infighting and whatever, all this other stuff that's kind of separate. But all that led me to like, hey, I don't necessarily maybe want to be part of this. Then I thought about it very logically. Well, I can spend a lot more money to finish this school and a few more years. And all that allows me to do is get in front of patients, have the title doctor in front of my name, which is valuable. And in hindsight, wish I had it. Um, and allows me to do like certain manipulations and manual therapy things. And I said, well, can I help people without doing those things? If I'm just a trainer, which is something that I definitely struggled with, and my ego took a hit to that at the beginning, and it was something that I definitely struggled with. If I can be that and help people to get stronger, improve their mobility, improve their flexibility, lose weight, just become more resilient and robust and more physically capable, well, then I can prevent a lot of these injuries and a lot of the things anyways. So if I can get in front of that, that is still rehab, just in a different way. And, maybe people will call it prehab. But if we can make people stronger, more healthy up front, then we don't have to get so many people we don't have to get people on the injury side of things.
Hmm. So with that, like the barrier to entry to be a trainer or a coach is very low, like
Mhm.
pretty minimal.
Almost
At,
zero.
pretty much almost zero. I mean, you can train your friend for free and no one will care. So when you look at people that are doing rehabilitation, doctors, and all of these fancy titles and everything like that versus just a trainer as we quoted it. When we're looking at something like that, where would you make it so that the barrier to entry, do you think it's okay? Would you make it so that there's more education behind it to start actually training people and, for lack of a better term, I'll say messing around with their lifestyle?
I've thought about this a little bit over time, and I'm not sure that there's a full, complete answer that is exactly correct. But I'll give my current working thesis, and we can pick it apart here.
Yeah.
Um, I think that being a trainer is difficult and an important job. I don't think there should be as much governing body as is for a medical doctor or someone who's dealing with someone who's already injured or medical conditions or these kind of things. There are also problems that come with that. And some of the things that I saw was that it makes people think in boxes and in straight lines. And no one thinks kind of like, well, what about the human? We think about X symptom equals X treatment or prescription. And that works sometimes. I mean, on the population level, it works, but
Mhm.
not for every individual. And this is why you get stories of people saying, oh, I went to every doctor, they couldn't figure it out. I went to every physio, they couldn't figure it out. I went to every whatever, no one could figure it out. And then I found some, whack job, unregulated, they don't even have a title. They're just, they call themselves a healer and they fixed me. It's like, well, it's not because that they're better and that everyone else is worse. They were just able to think outside the box and figure what was going on. So all that to say, I don't think that training should have that much regulation, but it is probably a little bit too low just because the bar is so low. People get bad trainers, and also have bad experiences with that, and it makes the rest of us look bad.
Mhm.
What I think it should maybe change to is something more similar to the way the trades are done, where there's an apprenticeship aspect to this. I don't know how many years and how the exact structure of it would work, but you should have to intern under a gym or a trainer or a strength program or something like that for a certain number of years, and then they end up giving you the green light to say here's your black belt, and now you are able
Mhm.
to go off on your own and do your own thing. Because the technical knowledge that we need to know is important. You need to know your anatomy, you need to know your physiology, you need to know your biomechanics. Like you need to know those things. You don't need to be a PhD level to be effective, but you need to know those things. But more important than that is you need to know how to work with people, work with human beings. And
Mhm.
that is never something that you will ever learn in a course, in a textbook, and anything like that. Like you've got to just go out there and do it. But it's kind of problematic to just send someone out there into the world and say, here you go. Like
Mhm.
go ahead and learn on your feet. And people can do it and it works, but it also causes problems. So I think that kind of apprenticeship avenue would be well suited to trainers.
Yeah, I like that thought process. And I think one of the biggest things that you had said is that communication, working with people, and it's not something that we're taught right now. And in my opinion, I mean, that's the bigger side of it. You can know the bare minimum to the human body, and you can know a little bit about move more, eat less to a degree. Um, but really what it comes down to is someone comes, someone pays you, they you give them the plan and then they don't do it. Right? And I think that's that disconnect, and the most important conversation that we could start to have here is how do you actually get people to change their behavior, figure out why they went and paid you this $400 for the month or $600 for X amount of training sessions, and then all of a sudden they show up and then, well, life got the best of me outside of this. So when you're looking at actual behavior change and forming different habits, creating a better lifestyle, where's your starting point for that?
It's always meeting the person where they're at. Like we have this ideal that, you want to work out a few times a week, eat all your meals healthy, lift a certain amount, maybe have some metrics, but it's really like what is plus one from what you're doing right now? right? If you are not working out at all, you eat, takeout food for every single meal, you're drinking a few nights a week, you're not sleeping, like we can't expect that person to then, okay, no alcohol, count all your calories, like do all these things. It's like, okay, what is the thing that you uh think you might be able to do, or at least what is the sounds the least miserable to you to do? Is that get up off the couch and go for a 10-minute walk? Is it not even leave the house and you walk up and down your stairs? So like most things, I mean, there's not a blanket answer to that, but
Mhm.
it's really just about meet that person where they are and then add, plus one or plus two to whatever they're doing right now. And this is part of the like that you wouldn't learn in a textbook either, is that there are many ways that you can start to improve someone's health and someone's fitness.
Mhm.
And it doesn't always have to start with the workouts, doesn't always have to start with their nutrition, doesn't always have to start with sleep. Like it can start with any of these things. And there's a big trickle down effect of all of these things. One story to explain this and then bring it back
Mhm.
is I had a client who I still work with, but when we first started, um, the only thing we changed nutritionally was that she was drinking coffee like late into the evening, like 6, 7 p.m. And I said, the only thing that I need you to change, her diet otherwise was like was not very good. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of work to do here. And a lot of eating disorder, mental health things layered on top,
Mhm.
injuries. So there's a lot going on. We said the only thing I need you to do is no coffee after 2 p.m. That is it. And she did that. To her credit, she did that. No coffee after 2 p.m. All of a sudden, as if it were magic, she started sleeping better. Because she started sleeping better, she could wake up a little bit earlier in the morning. Because she could wake up a little bit earlier, she had time to make a proper breakfast. Because she had time to make a proper breakfast, she wasn't getting fast food for lunch. She wasn't snacking throughout the day, had a little bit more energy to get her workout in. And all of a sudden, in like the first 2 weeks, she lost like 15 pounds, which is not, a sustainable rate of
Mhm.
fat loss, but it's a big change. And, we see these things happen. And so she had this massive change, but all we really changed was removing the coffee.
Mhm.
And so if I would have told her, hey, you need to wake up earlier, you need to have a good breakfast, you need to not order fast food for lunch, you need to do this, this, that, and the other thing, she would have been overwhelmed and bamboozled and not done any of it. And then we probably wouldn't have worked together. She wouldn't have been helped. She was like, oh, fuck that guy. He's a bad trainer, doesn't know what he's doing.
Mhm.
And then we both would have been worse for it. Instead, we started very small and it has these trickle down effects. So it's always about like the conversation that you have with the client and saying, and for people who are listening, if you're not a coach, it's the conversation you have with yourself. It's like, what is the lowest barrier thing that I can do that is a positive change right now, and what other positive cascading effects might this change have? And then start there, and then you'll continue to build on it there. Things will become obvious and clear after that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think one of the things that just isn't talked about enough is momentum in general. When you can start to, even just like with that success story of no coffee after 2 p.m., all of a sudden that trickles into one thing after another after another. When you're in this constant state of trying to catch up, and you feel like you're just spinning your wheels, it's very easy to stay in that. But as soon as you see progress in one thing and then it trickles into the next thing, trickles into the next thing, just as you were saying, I feel it's much, much easier to keep going when you start to, okay, I feel better doing this, I feel better doing this. And as you can start to continue picking up momentum, it gets easier and easier and easier. So I'm also just curious, when we look at your in-person training, online training, where when you first started doing in-person training to where it is now, how has that shifted into what it is now? Because I'm sure that there have been a lot of changes, not just in the gym, but outside of the gym with that.
So when I first started doing in-person training, I was working for a gym, under someone else, and kind of in their system. Now, I had to follow that system and what they wanted to do with the clients as far as programming, as far as nutrition recommendations, and all that stuff. And it wasn't. I don't want to say it was bad, but it was a little bit rigid. Let's say that.
Mhm.
On the business side of it, I get it. Like we're trying to recreate a product, and there's a bunch of us trying to do the same thing, and like it made sense. So now that I'm not in that environment anymore, and I'm on my own, I have way more freedom to more individually tailor things to each client. Like if this client says, "Hey, I just like I feel really bad when I eat a lot of carbs," like, and I've heard, online that carbs are bad for you and it's whatever. I'll educate them on like how it's not. But if that's what they believe, like let's roll with that because
Hmm.
it's not wrong to say that that might be the best strategy for them for a period of time. Versus, the next client who comes in will say like, "Hey, if you tell me to eat if you tell me to not eat carbs, I'm gonna lose my shit. Like I can't be doing that anymore." And like, great, good news is you can eat them, and like then we'll take that different approach. So I think what's transformed is my malleability to that client based on the freedom of like kind of my working environment, but also my own personal experience with having or getting clients results using different methods. And so as time goes on, we all used to have our things that we thought this is the way, or this was the way that worked for me initially. And so it's probably got to work for other people. And then you start to work with more people and say, oh, well, we did this differently and they kind of got the same or similar result. And so now it's more about I'm more willing to accept that, hey, people coming to me I'm probably not the first fitness person that they've spoken to, and probably not the only or the first fitness content that they've consumed. And so they've heard things before. And so whatever their preconceived notions are, we can kind of roll with that and mold that into something that is going to work for them, maybe tone it down a little bit, but work with it rather than just fight against it and try and impose, what I think is the right way or the scientific way to do things. Because then we're just fighting against their psychology, and that's kind of a losing battle. So we've got to get people wins. We've got to roll with them, make the process easy, and then that's what, speaking to your bit on motivation there is like once we get the ball rolling, then everything becomes way easier. There's a quote, and just millions of people have said it, but it's like, the heaviest weight in the gym is the front door. Once you're in, then things become way easier. So we've just got to work with people and not be as combative to get them what they need.
Hmm. Um, so things like the silly thing, like I need to cut out all my carbs. Why do you think, just in your opinion here, why do you think that that is what gets clicks and views and people believe it, right? How do we even get to this point where that's what's believable, even though a majority of us understand it's not sustainable?
Two sides to this. Anything that is extreme or seemingly extreme gets views and clicks and gets eyeballs and gets attention. A couple sides to this, maybe more than two. Another side is that things that are said without nuance also get clicks, views, and attention. If I say carbs are bad for you, you should eat carbs, period, that will get more views than carbs are bad for you, you should never eat carbs. But in this case of sports performance and blah, 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 and all these other things, people are like, okay, who cares? Not extreme enough for me. Too much nuance, move on. That. The other side of it is that it works. All of these diets, vegan, carnivore, keto, no carb, no dairy, no whatever, you cut out a big part of a food group, you cut out a certain type of foods, you restrict your eating, intermittent fasting in some way, shape, or form, 99% of the time, like you're going to lose weight
Mhm.
because it's all of them are restricting your calories. So the problem with them is that they do work. They just don't work for everyone's lifestyle and for everyone's sustainability, which is what you alluded to. And that's correct. But people, it's hard to think about that. It's hard to think about, hey, I just really need to lose this 30 pounds. And, so and so online, well, look at that guy. He's got abs, he's got this around him and all that stuff. Like he's doing that and it works for him. Maybe it'll work for me too. I'm not really worried about what I'm going to do next year or 5 years from now because I just got to lose this 30 pounds. And
Mhm.
that's a very fair place to be in your mind. So the reason I think that it gets attention and gets perpetuated is because it works, and then because other trainers, and I include myself in this, spend and waste too much time arguing against that in that post or in that a piece of content instead of making another piece of content separate from it explaining their own way because there's many ways to get this done. We know that a calorie deficit is the way to lose weight. However you go about setting up your lifestyle to be in a calorie deficit, that's up to you. And all of them are valid and all of them are effective so long as the deficit is equal
Mhm.
and protein is equated. But again, too much nuance now.
Yeah, no, I understand. So, because it's always interesting to me just to see how people form their own opinions, why people are drawn to one belief versus another belief, how we can really just look at our little portion of the world that we need to go and help and be of service to. And okay, these are my people over here, but you know what, all of the people that need to, go and cut out carbs, perhaps those are just not my people that I need to service. So I'm interested to, when I'm looking at like your content and everything like that, it's, I've seen it be like, and this is just like visual effects wise. I've seen it be like very simple, but I've also seen it be flashy and things, and like things of that nature. Which do you find equates better to going and getting views, clicks, likes, or even potential leads, conversations?
It's an interesting question. I don't think about my content very strategically. So there's no real rhyme or reason to the order of this is flashy, this is simple, this is, whatever. The clips that you'll see that are more flashy, I don't make those because I can be bothered to spend the time to
Hmm.
do that, right? To do all
Yeah.
that all that edit stuff. But I realize that I've seen through testing over the years that that same clip with some more flashy captions or sound effects or whatever will get a little bit more attention than if it didn't.
Hmm.
However, far and away, the thing that gets more attention than the flashiness of the post is still the words that are said, whether it's more direct, whether it maybe does lack a little bit of nuance in that post. That still beats out any of the editing effects by far. Um, and the same, it's probably more noticeable in some of the simpler posts, like the Twitter
Hmm.
screenshots or whatever, where there's no flashiness. It's just words on a blank screen. But a post that gets more attention for that will again also be a little bit more direct, or it'll be a longer kind of story that hits home. So it's really about, and not that I'm very much trying to figure this out. Like I'm by no means an expert in
Hmm.
content or any of this
Hmm.
kind of stuff, but it's about trying to capture people's attention, trying to strike a nerve in their emotion, be it positive or you don't hope it to be negative, but
Hmm.
to some degree, it's like if you don't kind of like the way that I'm saying things or like the way that I portray this message, then you're probably not someone who likes what I'm doing overall anyways. And so if you get mad at me and unfollow me and don't listen to me, then so be it, because
Hmm.
I don't take it personally that I'm wrong. I just take it that, hey, I'm not the right person for you. And that is probably
Hmm.
true if that's the case, because someone else might be saying the exact same message as me, just in a different way that seems more related or relevant or nicer to you. And you go and listen to that person, and you're going to get the same results either way. Like there's a lot of people in the world, so it's if a
Hmm.
couple people unfollow for some reason, there's going to be more people that you're going to attract. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think about it. But it's just it's an attention game. The content thing is so
Yeah.
strange.
So when I hear this, when you're looking at having better direct communication, getting all the fluff out, how did you start to practice, train yourself, learn how to be more direct, how to be more concise, and take out some of those nuanced approaches or even just fluff for a lack of better words here?
It's tough to do because I love the nuance and I love the I
Hmm.
love the discussion part of it, and that is the reason why I started my podcast as well, like early on in my social media career, if you will, which that sounds terrible coming out of my mouth. but I realized very quickly, like, hey, this ain't it. Like I can't get the message across in a Instagram post. Like it's not, it is what it is.
Hmm.
But we have to have more space, and that's why I love the podcast format, because we do get to have more space and time to do that. So it's just been an intentional behavior, and I don't think I'm really good at it all
Hmm.
the time. But trying to pick out moments from the podcast where we said something that was more of a statement, maybe had a little bit more emotion, and then maybe the next three sentences in the podcast were explaining that nuance, but you clip that part out, and then if people want it, they can listen. If they don't want it, they can just be angry at me, and that's fine. Um, that and detaching myself from the emotion of some of the some negative or positive. Like I don't get too high on, hey, this post did really well, and
Hmm.
I don't get low on like, hey, there's a couple posts like a little while ago that there was a bunch of negative. There was a lot of positive, more positive than negative, but there was a bunch of negative, and the post overall did a lot better. But I just don't get upset about that. It's just people arguing online for no reason.
Yeah.
And to me, like I almost take it as a game. I like a good debate.
Mhm.
I like arguing with people to get to the truth of a matter, and I'm okay, or I think because I've done it so much and practiced at it, I feel like I'm pretty good at arguing without being too emotional
Mhm.
about the thing. Like we're talking about bicep curls. Like I'm not gonna get that angry about someone's opinion on bicep curls. It's just not that important, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that whether it's previously or even into now, that there's a part of you that's still, I shouldn't say still, because I'm projecting here, but do you think there's ever been a part of you where when you're arguing online with someone that you're just trying to get under their skin in a sense,
Oh
just
yeah,
because, yeah. Um,
absolutely. It's part of the
do you,
fun.
yeah.
Because I
Would,
know that I can get that reaction. And this maybe is like bullying behavior,
mhm,
whatever. Like I've got younger brothers and we've, fight and pissed each other off our whole life. We love each other, have a great relationship, but
mhm,
we're always picking at each other. And you know the things that you can say that's going to get him going.
yeah,
And it's kind of the same thing online with some of these people. So again, someone arguing about bicep curls, like I'm going to pick apart some piece of your argument that doesn't even make sense, but I know that it's going to get you going, and I'm sitting over here laughing, and we're arguing about bicep curls, and my
yeah,
post is getting more engagement. So
yeah,
yeah, part of it for me is a little bit fun. Like
yeah,
I'm sure you get these too, because literally everyone does, but you get those messages, you know, hey, I can edit your short form video, or I can
yeah,
buy followers, or
yeah,
grow your business, or like all that stuff. If I'm ever in a just need to kind of get some steam off, or in a mood, I'll go into my hidden requests and reply to a bunch of those and just kind of like just fuck with those people and get them
yeah,
upset, because it's a game to me. It's just a game to me of how do we uh understanding human behavior. And while that might be a negative thing, like I don't think I'm really harming anyone that badly doing that, but it is I think a good sign of understanding how to when you can get someone upset, you can also make someone happy. And so
mhm,
it's a good still proxy for like, do I understand humans and what gets them going? So if I can invoke one emotion, I can invoke another as well.
mm. Um, so why do you think that people online just tend to bicker and argue and want to get all this attention?
I don't know. I mean, I think getting notifications are fun. I think
Yep.
wanting to be right is
Mhm,
something that people like.
mhm,
And I wouldn't say that I'm outside of that. I am not holier than thou in this. Like I like getting notifications and I like being right too, but the thing that I can't understand is how people don't pick and choose their battles a little bit
mhm,
better. It's like if two trainers are arguing about some very nuanced training thing, it's like, well, who
mhm.
is this helping? How is this helpful to either of you? And it's always that one person is like very emotionally invested, and maybe the other person is just having a laugh, and that's the part that I can't. So I mean, I don't know why we like to interact.
Yeah.
The arguing is fun. The messages are flying back and forth, and so that. But at the end of the day, like it's really not helpful. I'm sure you see posts every single day, as I do. It's like, hey, that's kind of stupid. I completely disagree with that, but I'll just scroll on past it, and that's it.
Yeah. Um, have you been in a place where, when social media is part of your business and career and how you get honestly just make part of your living, do you get sucked into some type of trap where you just find yourself and you're like, "Oh my God, I've been on here all day long. I haven't done anything." How do you go from that place into a place of, let me actually find a little bit more self-awareness, understand that I was scrolling for the last like 45 minutes or an hour, whatever the time frame is, and get back into a place where you're not beating yourself up about that, and what was going to say here, not beating yourself up about that, and making sure it's not something that consistently happens.
Yeah, so I definitely do. Like I said,
Hmm.
not holier than thou in this. Like I get in the social media doom scroll as well. Um, One thing that I'm very big on, and this is goes shown in my coaching and the way that I coach as well, is just awareness. Is trying to be as acutely aware and consciously aware of the actions and their consequences of those actions that we're taking all the time. So I'll get in the doom scroll and then, 45 minutes go by and it's like, fuck, okay, I had to do this, that, and the other thing. I still got to do that. I still got to go to the gym. I still got to do whatever I can do. And I just kind of make a mental note of that and be like, okay, once I notice it, then now I can do something about it.
Mhm.
Right. So having reminders, have everything in my day set out in my calendar. And so, I'll get that notification mid doom scroll. I'll be like, oh, this thing is coming up in half an hour or an hour. And that is going to snap me out of it because it's drawing my consciousness or my awareness to that thing that requires my attention.
Mhm.
So structure is probably the answer to that, is having something else to do and making it so that it's difficult for you to forget or put it off. And then that's it's not a perfect solution for sure, because social media is very addicting. It is very good at keeping your attention, especially when you can somewhat justify it as this is me working like that,
Yeah.
which is not true.
Mhm.
Um, that's probably the way to do it. But it's not that dissimilar from mindless snacking or realizing that you haven't gone for a walk in 4 days or anything like that. It's just being aware of your behavior, having reminders and structure in your life so that you can't rely on your willpower all the time. So you've got to have external things to make you aware of what you're actually doing. And then once you're aware, then you can make a decision as to how you're going to proceed next if you want a given outcome.
Yeah. I mean, that's the theme that I think a majority of people are utilizing in terms of their coaching, is just that awareness aspect. And it can be easier said than done, but when you continue to train that muscle, it gets easier the next time and the next time and the next time. So,
Exactly.
Daniel, before we get into our last question here, just where can we find you and find the podcast, things like that first?
Everything is just my name, Daniel Yores, Yores. So podcast, all the platforms, um, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, all at Daniel Yores.
That's easy. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Real,
um,
real creative podcast name by me.
yeah, yeah. Hey, whatever works for you though, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, so last question comes from a question from our last guest. So this is from Anna Clow. So what, very simple question here. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Hmm. The advice that I would give to my younger self is, wow, it's a simple question, but a difficult one to answer because there are
Can be.
so many avenues to go. I would trust myself a little bit more.
Hmm.
One thing that I find that I still struggle with to this day is that once I commit to something, I will be all in on that thing.
Mhm.
But it takes me too long to make a decision to commit to the thing. Um, and so I've noticed, and it's a positive reinforcement for this, that every time that I take quick action on something, I see a course come up, I see an opportunity come up, and I don't think and I just do.
Mhm.
I'm positively rewarded for that. It ends up being a
Mhm.
good experience or a good outcome. Now, of course, I've made some mistakes and whatever. So maybe not every time, that's
Mhm.
not fair to say, but more often than not, it's a positive outcome versus when I wait and deliberate on should I do this, should I do that? Like a perfect example is my time from dropping out of school to embracing that I'm going to become a trainer when I kind of knew that that was the outcome anyways. Like it's kind
Mhm.
of, 75% decided in my mind, but I didn't really commit to it. There was probably like an 8 to 10 month lag there where I was like not doing well and not in a good headspace, like just not doing much of anything. And if I could have just started sooner and committed, I would have got to the same
Mhm.
outcome and I would have been way happier and way better off and 8 to 10 months ahead of where I am now. So I think the answer is trust my instinct a little bit more and commit faster to things.
Yeah, I think when you look at like people that are making strides versus getting into a place that's stuck, it comes down to a lot of what you're saying, where it's just the amount of time to make a decision.
Hmm.
Whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision, indecision is still a decision. And
Correct.
so when you can just go and make a decision, and then whether it's right or wrong, it's going to happen either way. It pushes you And there's a lot of like growth that can happen by just making decisions quicker. Not saying that you just use your every impulse and just that's how you make decisions, but yeah, instead of taking 8 to 10 months. I understand what you're saying here.
Yeah,
You
like
know?
still be relatively calculated and make an
Yeah.
intelligent decision, but constant deliberation is not going to really get you further ahead. Like, you will learn more by just doing something, realizing it was the wrong thing, and then changing course after that. So that, like, you'll learn more by doing than by trying to think about doing, which kind of, I guess, circles back to, the talk about how to elevate training and how to elevate trainers and how this profession should move forward, is that you learn a lot by trying to figure out how the best way to set up a queue for a bench press is by reading a textbook, but you'll
Mhm.
learn way faster by going in with a client, doing it wrong, and be like, oh shit, that didn't work. Well, let
Yep.
me try this instead. So,
Yeah.
the same way indecision is uh is a decision. Making mistakes is also a way to improve.
Yeah. So, Daniel, appreciate you coming on here. And guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.